For many people, anxiety is not just physical symptoms. In fact, it's often how to deal with intrusive thoughts. Often the label that gets diagnosed with that is OCD. And one of the most common questions I get asked is, Shaan, I'm dealing with anxiety, but I was also diagnosed with OCD. How do I go about it? Is that even part of anxiety, or is it something separate? What I want to talk about is what I did to fully overcome. Look, I got diagnosed with anxiety, OCD, dissociative disorder because I had derealization, depersonalization, and agoraphobia, and a little bit of depression. Point is, I got diagnosed with 5 different things, and at the time, I thought my life was ruined. I felt like I had to fix each specific problem. But the truth is that once I just focused on a few things, all of it went away. More importantly, I want to show you how to really address dealing with intrusive thoughts or OCD so that you don't have to deal with this long term. You can focus on going back to living without dealing with any of this stuff, enjoying yourself like how I am in New York City, and just traveling or whatever you want, whatever your desires are, and not really dealing about running away from thoughts. So with that said, let's get it started. So one of the most common DMs I get on my Instagram is, Shaan, how do I deal with this specific thought? Shaan, did you ever get these thoughts? Shaan, I got diagnosed with OCD. Is that separate from anxiety? Is it part of anxiety? Do I do something different? Shaan, this thought went away, but now I'm fearing this thought. You can tell it just becomes an endless cycle. And what I wanted to do is really address all those questions in this one video, because the truth is that it's really easy to make mistakes when it comes to intrusive thoughts. In fact, the most sinister part about anxiety, in my opinion, is actually dealing with the intrusive thoughts. You may have heard in this channel multiple times that I talk about the physical symptoms that are due to anxiety. Now, while the physical symptoms are really intense and it's very important to get everything ruled out by your doctor, it's in fact being fueled by the thoughts. So let me give you an example, okay? I had a client in the past, Daryl. You can see his success story. You can just check out the success stories. He's like one of the very first people. He was dealing with heart palpitations. Now, he got everything ruled out multiple times by his doctor. In fact, he got things ruled out for almost 20 years. He was still dealing with this. And so he was feeling intense palpitations. Now, his palpitations were legit. They were legitimate. What was happening is that his nervous system was sensitized, and because it was sensitized, his heart was just pumping more, just because it had more adrenaline, because he was in this fight or flight state. However, if you ask Daryl what he was struggling with, he was actually struggling with, what if something happens to my heart? What if I'm on the onset of a heart attack? Okay, last time it was fine, but what if this time it's something serious? What if there's actually something seriously wrong, but by the time the doctor finds out, it's too late? So what was really happening here? What was happening here was that, yes, he was feeling the physical symptoms, but it was being fueled by his intrusive thoughts. The intrusive thoughts were making him think worst case scenario. And so this is just one part of anxiety. Anxiety can manifest itself in physical symptoms, and you can think what if situations there. You can also think what if situations of, what if I'm going crazy? What if I hurt somebody? What if I hurt myself? What if my partner's cheating on me? It's whatever is personal to you, whatever your biggest fears are. One of the things to understand about intrusive thoughts or OCD is that it will catastrophize. What that means is it will look at all the bad case scenarios, grab the scariest one and magnify it. That's how anxiety works. Now, why does it do that? Why does anxiety always come up with the worst case scenario? Anxiety at the end of the day is about survival. It's about keeping you alive. And historically, if you could problem solve your way out of a bad situation, you were more likely to survive. But that doesn't really apply nowadays. With modern technology, with modern science, with just the environment that we're in, a lot of the stressors are different than what we ancestrally evolved from. You know, it's no longer tigers coming in. You know, what if there's a tiger behind this pole? It's not like that anymore. And so what happens is that many people often think they have different problems. This is anxiety, but this is not anxiety. Okay, I have anxiety, but what if, I'm actually going crazy? What if, somebody else was going through anxiety and came out, but I wasn't able to come out because I have a condition of whatever, even though they've gotten everything ruled out. Well, what I always say, what we do when we help people fully overcome in the mentorship is that the first thing we tell them is throw everything under the anxiety umbrella. Throw everything. See, oftentimes in this channel, you'll hear me talk about physical symptoms. You'll hear me talk about depersonalization, derealization. I do make videos about intrusive thoughts, but it could easily be thought as, oh, okay, well, my, DPDR isn't that strong. My physical symptoms, yeah, they're there, but they're not as scary. But Shaan, it's my thoughts that are scary. Well, it's the same principle, which is throwing everything under the anxiety umbrella. So whether that's physical symptoms, whether that's the intrusive thoughts, whether that's derealization, depersonalization, it's all part of the stress response. It's all part of anxiety. And so what happens is that when people get labeled with OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, they think it's somehow different. It's still a subset of anxiety. It really is. See, think about it this way, right? You're obsessing. What are you obsessing about? You're obsessing about a thought that you're thinking about a worst case scenario. And like I mentioned, anxiety heightens worst case scenarios. So even though a worst case scenario, there's like a 0.00000000001 chance, for anxiety, it'll make it seem like, no, 99%, this is what's gonna happen. That's just how anxiety works. And so what happens is that you start obsessing about it. Now what happens when you wanna run away from a thought, when you don't even wanna think about the thought? You don't wanna think about it because then it reminds you of, what if I'm going crazy? What if this happens? What if that happens? Well, now you start developing compulsions. Compulsions is just another word of avoidance behavior. It's no different than someone who's dealing with agoraphobia who can't leave his house. It's not that it's outside that makes them nervous. It's just how they feel when they're outside. So they become avoidant. And so because of that, they end up staying home. So it's very important to understand these labels, they're not designed for you. They're designed for professionals so that they can easily categorize you, so that if you go from one professional to another, they're able to quickly identify, okay, this person has panic disorder and OCD. Okay, so he has panic attacks and he's dealing with intrusive thoughts. This person isn't really dealing with health anxiety. But what happens is people make it an identity. People start thinking they have multiple problems, which, in fact, this leads me to the second point, which is when you're dealing with intrusive thoughts, it's not really the content that matters. What I mean by that is that it's not actually the content of the thought. So let me give you an example. I recently got a DM from somebody saying, Shaan, do you ever fear that it's not anxiety, but bipolar? And actually, when I was struggling with anxiety, I did think that. I was actually really concerned about that. In fact, I even made a video about it, but I had everything ruled out. Then the same person DM'd me a week later saying, Shaan, okay, I know it's not bipolar, but what if it's ADHD or ADD? I don't remember which one he said. And so what's really happening here? What's happening is that anxiety is fueling thoughts, and it's just coming up with what if situations. Now, is the situation really about bipolar and ADHD? It's not. All it is that the content doesn't matter. It's just an intrusive thought. The content doesn't matter. In fact, even in the mentorship, we have people that really have debilitating physical symptoms. We have people that are struggling with depersonalization, derealization. We have people that are dealing only with intrusive thoughts. The response is the same. And you have to understand, when you're dealing with anxiety, look, you're in this fight or flight state. This isn't a state that just disappears. It's a state. It stays there for a little bit. It's because your nerves are sensitized and it takes time to heal. So you need to give it a chance to de-stress, to desensitize, to heal. Now, when that happens, look, your mind is just trying to process everything around you. But it's trying to process it in this fight or flight response, in this stress response, in this survival response. So it's just trying to process everything, but it's not the content that matters, right? So one of the things to focus on when you're dealing with these intrusive thoughts, when you're dealing with, obsessions like that, is recognize that it's not really the content that matters. It's not about fighting a thought. It's about responding to a thought. The first thing you have to do is identify and label that thought for what it is, which is just an intrusive thought. Every single thought you have in a day, do you really have to fight it every single time? Do you really have to think it through? Do you really have to try to figure everything out? Or can it just be a thought? Can you just let it be and let it burn itself out? Even if it is very convincing. Just letting it burn itself out, because at the day it's a thought. So if you can focus on this, if you can focus on first recognizing, not separating these different issues, but combining them and making it one single problem. It's just anxiety manifesting itself in different situations. And so first things first is throw everything under the anxiety umbrella. The second thing is it's about the response, not the content that matters. It doesn't matter what the fear is. It's about how you respond to the fear. See, you think fighting the fear, analyzing it, and getting it fixed will make the fear go away. That doesn't do it. It actually reinforces it. It becomes a compulsion, hence OCD. And what that does is that each compulsion actually makes the anxiety stronger. As it makes the anxiety stronger, the thoughts become stronger. So it's better just to let it burn itself out. And when I look back at my recovery journey and I say, man, how could I have gone a little bit quicker? How could I have understood a little bit more? It always comes back to the same thing. Someone who would have just taken you step by step. Someone who knew exactly what you were going through. And that's not just a theory I came up with. That's exactly what we do when we guide people step by step through the mentorship. People are making lightning speed. They're getting out. They're going back to living. People that have been struggling for years, decades often, and they're going back to living freely, no long-term consequences. So look, the key is this. Find somebody you trust, have them guide you step by step. Someone who ideally who's gone through it themselves as well. And someone who's actually gotten people to recovery. You know, it's one thing to get yourself to recovery. It's another thing to have a skill set of guiding people. They're two different skill sets. So really focusing on finding somebody who's just a few steps ahead of you. That's all it takes. Someone who's been there to guide you step by step. And look, if you want to work with me, that's totally cool. I'll put a link down below for the mentorship. When you hit that link, it's going to show you a video showing you how the mentorship works. What kind of results do we get? Who is the mentorship for? Who is it not? Full transparency. In fact, even when you watch the video and fill out an application, we'll have a free strategy session with you. We will look at your situation and look, if you're not a good fit, we will tell you you're not a good fit and we'll point you to someone else or point you in the right direction, no hard feelings. But if you are a right fit, we'll invite you to the mentorship. And if you want to join, hop on. If not, totally cool too. The focus is on getting yourself out of this. Don't focus on coping tricks. Yeah, they have their place, but focusing on recovery is a little bit different. It's not about using techniques. It's not about using coping. It's about focusing on long-term freedom. So I hope this video helped. I'll see you in the next one.